Welcome to another exciting episode of Nerd Central. I'm Shannon Clement.
And I'm Krista Ott. We have our next installments of Dragon Corner, Heart of the Cards, Look Back, and Dead on Arrival. Plus, we have our second round of Best DC Character Tournament. But first, let's talk about some films being released while we are on winter break. The first film to be released is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Set within the newly created Sony animated Spider-Man universe with no connection to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, this film follows Miles Morales while he takes up the mantle of Spider-Man after the death of Peter Parker. One day while patrolling the city, he runs into a Spider-Man which turns out to be Parker. Confused, Peter tells Miles he is from an alternate universe. The Spider-Men must team up with Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, and other Spider-People from other universes to stop Peter Parker's Spider-Man's rogue gallery of villains from taking over every universe. We can confirm that the late Stan Lee will make a cameo in the film. Where it will be is still unknown. It will be nice to hear the legend's voice after his death. The film will release on December 14th.
Next is Mortal Engines, produced by the Middle-earth Saga director, Peter Jackson. The film is set in the future where the world is on the brink of extinction, with cities in the sky, on the ground, or completely mobile. It follows Hester Shaw and her group of misfits as they lead a rebellion against the evil dictator of the only mobile city left in existence. It is based on the first young adult novel in the Hungry City Chronicles by Philip Reeve. The film will release on the same day as Spider-Man, December 14th.
Now, let's take a break from the films coming up and take it to our next installments of Dragon Corner and Heart of the Cards. Take it away, guys.
Hello and welcome to the penultimate episode of Dragon Corner, which I have lovingly and meticulously titled Miscellaneous. This week we'll be covering all the little bits and pieces that didn't make it into other episodes but may make it into Dragon Ball Super Broly. It's worth noting that the film is more or less finished and has already premiered, but seeing as it won't be released in theaters until December in Japan and January in America, and I have been furiously trying to avoid spoilers since the synopsis leaked, we'll continue to operate under the assumption that you're going in completely blind, so this is largely speculative and none of it will contain spoilers. One question you might have about power scaling is how Goku and Vegeta can keep up with the increasingly perilous opponents that the show offers. One of the concepts I didn't get to in my Saiyan biology lesson is the concept of Zenkai. Zenkai refers to a Saiyan's ability to grow stronger from battle. Specifically, Saiyans typically see a huge power boost after dying or almost dying. Saiyan bodies adapt incredibly fast, recovering from injuries with remarkable speed and learning from the experience. This actually makes drawn-out battles and minor losses useful, as they increase the likelihood that the body will gain immunity or coping mechanisms for similar situations. Self-inflicted injuries do not trigger this response, although characters often game the system by training in increased gravity or harsh conditions. A character that we've touched on multiple times but never truly covered is Goku's oldest son, Gohan. Gohan is the first and youngest known Super Saiyan 2, discovering the form during his fight with Cell when he was around 11. During Majin Buu's rampage on Earth, Gohan had his inner power awakened by a Kai ritual. This form, which fans call Ultimate, Mystic, or Potential Unleashed, surpasses Super Saiyan because it keeps the power contained within rather than exuding it, and puts Gohan in the running for the most powerful person in Universe 7. Unfortunately, Toriyama considers Gohan to be much more of a scholar than a warrior, and even after rededicating part of his life to training, he refuses to utilize Super Saiyan or God Ki, stating that he's aiming for a different goal than his father. It seems as though Gohan will not have a large role in the upcoming film, although his little brother Goten, the youngest known Super Saiyan 1, will be featured to a certain extent. Another Dragon Ball staple that may make an appearance in Broly is the Spirit Bomb. Taught to Goku by King Kai at the same time as the Kaioken, this technique differs from Yamcha's Spirit Ball or Frieza's Death Ball because the energy comes from the living beings around the user, as opposed to the user themselves. The Spirit Bomb can only be utilized by those with a pure heart, and it won't hurt them either. This takes an infamously long time to charge, and Goku can't use Super Saiyan because it causes malice to creep into his heart. Despite being considered Goku's trump card, it's only ever actually worked the once. And finally, we may see the recent fan favorite Ultra Instinct. This form is both a technique and a transformation primarily used by angels. The first stage is known as Ultra Instinct Sign or Omen, and it allows Goku to dodge, block, and maneuver without actually thinking, allowing his body to take full reins. Unfortunately, the Omen form is indicative that Goku is unable to remove his brain from the fight fully. He's basically untouchable, but his attacks are feather light as he still thinks about them before executing. After several attempts, Goku masters the form, achieving a state deeper than even pure instinct, which allows him to utilize his full strength and speed without waiting for messages to navigate his nervous system. Upon this transformation, even the gods stand for Goku, recognizing that his skill can surpass even Superman-level and God-level characters. Mastered Ultra Instinct has only appeared once so far, and Goku is incapable of intentionally using it as of yet. And one more thing. In my video about gods, I said that Grand Zeno erased universes 13 through 18 because he was upset about a game of hide-and-seek. This was incorrect. While the hide-and-seek incident did occur, it's unrelated. It's implied that these universes were erased simply because he'd had a bad day, or because he thought there were just too many. I hope that clears up just about anything Dragon Ball Super Broly could throw at you. With any luck, you'll be able to sit down in a local theater January 16th and enjoy the film at face value with absolutely no prior knowledge of the franchise. Come back next week when we'll review our cumulative knowledge and use it to break down some trailer footage right here on Dragon Corner.
Hello and welcome to Nerd Central's Heart of the Cards with your host Bradley Justice. I will be taking a deep dive into the anime juggernaut that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Or what I like to call the Friendship Show.
You betrayed our friendship and sent me away. Just like you did to your friends.
That was then.
What?
That's right, Yubel. I'm a different person now. Strong and unafraid to use all my powers against you. Got that? So prepare to experience the full extent of my power. And Cyrus?
Yeah, Jade?
I won't let you down.
Season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is a long and confusing saga, so I'm going to cover the key plot points around this season and talk about the ending, of which gets me so frustrated. Some new students transfer from North Academy to Dual Academy, and the biggest name of them all is Jesse Anderson, a blue-haired kid with a southern United States accent. He wears a white and blue jacket design similar to Jaden's red and white. That's not the only thing they have in common. They both can talk to dual monster spirits and become best friends real quick. Jesse soon gets possessed by a deranged spirit and former friend of Jaden's, Yubel, and travels through a journey of all the different dimensions. Yubel's goal is to fuse all the dimensions together to make one, a world in which she controls and can make Jaden and her the only living thing in it. But before Jaden can save his friend and the world, he has to conquer his dark side in the different dimensions. Nicknamed the Supreme King in the other world, his dark half is an evil ruler that doesn't care about the safety of his friends and is almost the complete opposite of Jaden. Now with the summary of the season is done, I want to talk about how infuriating the ending of American GX version is. With Jaden fusing together with Yubel to stop the destruction of the world, Jaden says he finally understands Yubel, and they are going to fuse together to make one spirit and fight the waves of evil together. After they fuse together, everybody but Jaden returns to the Earth, and Cyrus says Jaden has been sent to the stars, and boom, the ending, and that is what really triggers me. I mean, saying you're going to fight the world together, then basically die. I was so mad at the ending that I couldn't hold my anger. I immediately started researching and found out the fourth season was never dubbed, and you can only find the hidden fourth season on selected few streaming services like Crunchyroll. And the fourth season was fantastic and dark. It showed blood sacrificing, Jaden not believing in himself, and what we were promised, Jaden and Yubel fighting the world of darkness side by side. This is the true ending of the GX series, and I loved every second of it. I officially changed my persona to being a superfan of the subbed versions of anime because of this. This has been Heart of the Cards with Bradley Justice.
Thanks, guys.
We are going to take a short break, but when we come back, we will talk about 3 huge films releasing only a couple days apart. Stay with us. Welcome back to Nerd Central. Let's talk about those 3 huge films. The first is Mary Poppins Returns. The film takes place a couple decades after the original and follows Michael and Jane Banks, now all grown up, as Mary Poppins comes back into their life following a death in the Banks family. Mary Poppins attempts to bring joy and happiness back into the lives of Michael, Jane, and Michael's children. Emily Blunt has taken over as Mary Poppins from Julia Andrews for the sequel, but Dick Van Dyke is returning as Mr. Dawes from the 1964 classic. The film will be released on December 19th.
The next film is Aquaman. Taking place after the events of Justice League, Arthur Curry, played once again by Jason Momoa, as he is summoned back to the underwater world of Atlantis, only to find out he is the rightful heir to the throne. He must take back the throne from his stepbrother, who vows to wage war with us land dwellers. Along the way, Curry runs into one of his greatest comic book nemesis, Black Manta. This film is a continuation of the DC Extended Universe, started all the way back with Man of Steel. The film will be released on December 21st.
The final film in that couple-day window is Bumblebee, set prior to the events of the last 5 Transformer films. It follows Charlie Watson, played by Haley Steinfeld, as she turns 18 and gets her first car. Little does she know that there's more to this car than meets the eye. The yellow Beetle just so happens to be an Autobot, but not just any Autobot, it's Bumblebee. John Cena rounds out the noble cast members, with Peter Cullen returning to voice the character he is most recognized for, Optimus Prime. Travis Knight steps into the director chair from series veteran Michael Bay. Every Transformer in the film have taken their design off of the 80s cartoon than any of the films before. We will just have to see if this is what will bring Transformers back to being good films. We will just have to see when this film is released on December 21st.
Now let's take it to our next installments of Look Back and Dead on Arrival. What do you have for us this week, Mikey and Cody?
Hello, and welcome to Look Back, a retrospective on shows that I used to love to shows that I love in the present day. I'm Mikey, and this season is almost over, so I got to thinking, and I thought, let's do a 3-show special. This is Cyber Chase, Phineas and Ferb, and Family Guy. Let's start out with the childhood TV show. This is Cyber Chase. Cyber Chase is a cartoon that sends 3 kids to cyberspace to protect Motherboard from being destroyed by an evil hacker. And yeah, that sounds technology-oriented, but in reality, not so much. This show is mainly about teaching math to kids, and it is very evident. Every episode has the 3 main kids trying to learn a mathematical concept to get through their issue. And teaching-wise, it works to a degree to the watcher. I remember watching this show back in the early 2000s, and I enjoyed it immensely. Now, I can't really say how much I learned from it, but overall, I'm amazed that this show is still running. And while I have outgrown it, I really think it is a good show for children to watch. So, while they're watching that, I'm moving on to the next show, Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb is about 2 boys having the best summer ever. Whether it be creating a roller coaster in your backyard, making your family car into a monster truck, or something sensible, like time travel. Phineas and Ferb will not let any summer day go by them. I watched this show when it was brand new, and I really enjoyed it. The show is simple in concept, but the actual writing is superb. And while the show did end, this show used every minute it had to its greatest ability. But when it comes to shows not doing that, a prime example is Family Guy. Family Guy is where you go for the most crude and unintelligible jokes imaginable, some of which I can't even show on air. Following Peter Griffin and his family, Family Guy goes around Quahog doing all kinds of crazy stuff that is no more than for comedy. I honestly prefer shows that when they have those jokes, they have a deeper meaning behind them. And sometimes in Family Guy it has that, but most of the time, not really. I enjoy the show. It's definitely good, but it's just not up to the tier of next week's show. Next week, we go into my favorite TV show right now. Stay tuned to Nerd Central.
Hello and welcome to Dead on Arrival. I'm Cody Nance, and we're going to talk about a 1-season show. This installment is going to be a little somber and serious, as we are talking about Wolverine and the X-Men. The timing is awful with the passing of Stan Lee, but I do have a schedule to keep, so instead of the usual rage and parody that I'm famous for, this installment will be in honor of his creation. The show aired on Nicktoons, and we open with the most common occurrence in the X-Men universe, the mansion blowing up. Pretty much everyone is okay though, except for Jean has gone missing and Professor X has gone into a coma, and all the kids have nowhere to go but back to their homes in the world of mutant racism. Wolverine and Beast are chilling in the basement of the mansion being sad when Charles confusingly talks from them from the future and shows them the end of the world at the hands of the Sentinels. If you don't know already, Sentinels are giant mutant killing robots that eventually start killing humans too because they could potentially give birth to mutant offspring. This causes the end of the world and motivates Wolverine to get the band back together. Really, the only reason the title is Wolverine in the X-Men is because it came out alongside X-Men Origins Wolverine. Thankfully, the show is much better than that movie. The flow of the show is that for about the first half of the season, each episode focuses on each individual X-Men and what they have been up to since the explosion. Gambit has been doing some thieving, Cyclops, who is expertly voiced by the legendary Nolan North, is out looking for Jean and being broody. Iceman moved back with his parents, Storm is like the Queen of Africa or something, and Nightcrawler is a freaking pirate. Then on the back half of the season, they all finally reunite to save the future from Sentinels. The most interesting thing about this show is seeing what all the X-Men would have become if they didn't have the team. And the action is extremely awesome, and well, because it aired at a later time, this allowed for it to be a wee bit more mature, but still not completely scarring for the kiddos. There's even a Hulk vs. Wolverine episode. It was awesome. Unfortunately, this show famously has one of the stupidest reasons for being cancelled in history. Apparently, the creators just couldn't get anybody at Nicktoons to actually pay them as Nicktoons was about to go under. And worst of all, the season ended on a cliffhanger, opening up for Season 2 to actually be the Apocalypse storyline. So, from Dead on Arrival, I'm Cody Nance, and that's enough said.
Thanks, guys. One last film we want to talk about that's coming out while we are on break. That would be Glass. Set in the same universe and serves as a continuation for both Unbreakable and Split, the film follows Kevin Wendell Crumb, Dave Dunn, and Mr. Glass, played again by James McAvoy, Bruce Willis, and Samuel L. Jackson respectively, as they are admitted into the same asylum. All hell breaks loose as one of the 24 personalities inside Kevin, aka the Beast, comes to the forefront as we discover that Mr. Glass is the mastermind behind it all. That's a Shyamalan twist if there ever was one. The film will be released on January 18th, 2019.
Well, that's all the news we have for this week. You can get caught up on all of our previous episodes on the KNWT YouTube page.
Also, follow KNWT on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and follow Nerd Central on Twitter at nerd_central_TV. After the break, we have round 2 of our Best DC Character Tournament. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Nerd Showdown, the part of Nerd Central where we battle it out on a particular topic we have no business debating. I'm your host, Devin Van Zant, and with the release of Aquaman and the Arrowverse crossover event in December, we ask the question again: who is the best DC character? With me today, I have Bearcat Update and Channel 8 news reporter Nolan Brooks, and Nerdmageddon crew member Corbett Evans.
What's going on?
Nolan, why don't you start us off? Why do you believe that Joker is the best DC character?
He really brings this presence to any aspect that he's in, whether it's the comic books, the TV shows, the video games, the movies. Everything that he's in, he just brings this aura, this presence that really, even though he's a villain, draws you to him. You can really connect with him, and I think that his feud with Batman and everybody that he really meets up with, every time is a solid connection, and he aims to beat them psychologically before physically. He wants to break them, and he wants to show them that they're not who they are, and he wants to really get in their minds without doing anything to them. And I just feel like overall, when he executes his crimes and everything that he does, it's so particular, but at the same time it's simple, and that's what makes it outrageous, is that he can pull off such humongous crimes, but all he has to do is say, okay, I need this amount of people, and it's going to happen here, and that's it. So I think that he's the best character because of how simple yet outrageous he is.
Black Hand, he's a pretty obscure DC character, but I think he's pretty interesting for a number of reasons. For one thing, he's a part of the ring, the emotional ring things, like the Green Lanterns.
Spectrum.
Yeah, emotional spectrum.
Yes.
Pretty obscure one too, like I have said. But one thing that's really interesting about him is that he was literally created to poke at a trope that became really apparent in DC Comics at the time, which was the concept of resurrection, which to many might feel is a deus ex, to just make sure that their characters keep coming back. And his entire creation was supposed to be an in-lore reason for why that's unacceptable. His entire motive was he was chosen by the embodiment of death in the DC Universe, Necron, to basically claim back those that should belong to death, aka all the resurrected villains and heroes. Mm-hmm. And so when he became that power, he literally threatened the entire universe by becoming the embodiment of death and then resurrecting all of those dead villains, ironically.
I haven't done much research into Black Hand personally because he's such an obscure character, but I also feel like that's why he's a weaker character. He's obscure. They haven't brought him out as much. I mean, yes, early on when, Corbett talks about this meta and all that stuff that they needed him for, and he really embodied that. That was his time, but since then, I mean, there's not much about him.
Joker, he's kind of cliche DC villain. He's been revamped, redone so many times that it almost becomes kind of tedious. Like, I'm not a huge DC fan, but I know of him, but there's so many versions of him, I don't even know where to start.
Even though there's so many revamps of Joker, every time, it proves that they want to keep doing this character overall because there's so many different ways you can take this character and mold him into something that is that much better in a way.
The fact that he's only used in one place shows that he was already done perfectly. Why would they need to change it or revamp it when he was already done in such a perfect way? They built him up so much, they let him have his moment, and then they didn't touch it because they might think that, hey, if we touch this again, we might ruin the image that we've created for him.
That is going to do it for this week's Showdown, and this week the winner is Corbett. Because I agree with your reasoning that they took a character and that they already had operating that had nothing to him, and they built him up from the ground up and gave him reason and motivation and made him important. And I think that was a really solid point you made there. You can head to Nerd Central's Twitter to show your support for this week's Showdown. Nerdmageddon is coming up next. You can check out Bearcat Update at 6 p.m. and Channel 8 News immediately following. See you next week on Nerd Central.